You're scared, and I get it. You should be scared. This thing is coming, this thing is moving all around the world, and it's coming to your door, it's coming to your life, and there is no stopping it. And the message is clear right now. I mean, the message is stay away, be safe, make a safe community, make a safer world. But that comes with fear, that comes with anxiety, that comes with all of this change that isn't just gonna happen out there, it's gonna happen in your life, it's gonna happen right in your world. And what do you do about that? So this is a video about COVID-19 and work and life, and it's for those who are feeling the strain of that, the stress of that, feeling anxious. And rightfully so. You know, lots of people have lost their jobs, their economic prospects have dropped out, and it's real. You know, there's certain countries that aren't even yet thinking about jobs or economy. They're still thinking about life and living and doing their best to get through this. And so what this video is about is when the time is right in your life to help you go from stress to strategy, to really kind of flip from one side of the conversation to the other and to shift between these two words. And again, the timing for each person is going to be different on that. You know, you're going to need to a certain extent, just be in the situation for a while, depending on what it is for you. But when it does make sense, when you are ready to turn the page, to then get into how do I build this to have a better future come out of it as a result. But what's the answer once that's done? What's the next move? And all of these emotions make us feel like all we want to do is go and run and hide. But then what? What comes next? You know, this change is going to bring choice. It's going to bring opportunity. It's going to ask you to stop. And then it's going to ask you to restart. And you get to choose how to do that. Oftentimes when we have these kind of situations that feel unprecedented, I like to try to go back and figure out, are they unprecedented? Or do we have lessons from the past that can help us think through this? And so I've been doing quite a bit of research and reading about the Great Depression. And one of the stories that caught me in particular was Hollywood. And so as we go through this video, I want you to keep a couple words in mind, and they'll make sense as we go along. I want you to think about dishes and B movies and Fred Astaire, and you'll see how those things start to provide a way to think about your strategy moving forward in work in this difficult time. So 4 pieces of advice for you as we think through this. The first is to literally just own the news, to accept what's been happening. And there's a way to do that I find quite easy, it's quite clear, is you literally just take a piece of paper like this and you write down the situation that you've experienced over the last couple of weeks or the last couple of months. So I've lost my job, or I'm working from home, or my economic prospects have really started to be severely hit. I mean, let's face it, when we talk about owning the news, the stock market's dropped by 1/3 over the last month. So what that means is that of all the transactions that we have through business, through public business, we think that those transactions have dropped in value by 1/3. That's extraordinary. I mean, it really is a powerful moment in our world right now. And so we just need to own that news. You know, in Canada, we've had 500,000 people apply for unemployment insurance in the last week. That's 3% of all of our workers apply for EI in a week. And so, again, this is an extraordinary time, and stage 1 is just to own it. To sit back and say, that's what my life has just experienced, and not to think through it with emotion, but to get down on paper so you can say, that's just it. And to give yourself enough distance from the emotion with it so that over time you can just say, I own the news. And a good example of that right now, Denmark's just made a really bold, huge decision. They've decided they're going to pay people who are going to lose their job 75% of their salary so that they can go home and wait to come back to work with those same employers. And what they're saying is that what the goal is with this is to go down quick, freeze the economy, and come out of this quick. And that's our best way to recover. And so stage 1 is always just to let what's happened sink in. And even if that's causing strain and stress and anxiety, let it sink in. Because when you do that, you can then start to flip to strategy. And oftentimes we take this word for granted, but strategy simply means positioning yourself better in the future. And so how do you start to do that? How do you make decisions that will allow you to take this powerful situation in this world, this terrible situation in the world, and help it over the long run set you up to be in a better position as a result? And this is where I started to look into Hollywood, because you think about the Great Depression, 1929, huge stock market crash, in lots of ways was one of the biggest factors for the Great Depression that lasted almost a decade and went into World War II. And you're Hollywood, so you're this source of entertainment at a time where people are trying to be aware of every single dollar that they spend. And so what did Hollywood do as a result? I mean, they could have just been obliterated by the Great Depression, but instead they started to have a really fascinating strategy, and they responded quickly. So instead of just making these dream-like movies, they started to make really real movies that talked about people's experience. And as a result, people started to find new interest in what was coming out of Hollywood. And then what they did is they started to make their movies as accessible and easy to come to as possible from a value perspective. So they essentially said, instead of coming to one movie, you're now going to come to a bunch of different movies. You're going to come to short films, you're going to come to the A movie that you've bought the ticket for, but a bunch of B movies. And if you come, we're going to give you a free dish. And so over time, if you come to 6 movies, you're going to have 6 free plates to then feed your family from. And so they started to kind of offer as much value as possible. And so when you start to think about strategy, the first thing you do is then think about, well, what's the short-term solution? Like, what can I do right now to take some of the pressure off? And in a Hollywood situation, they started to become as valuable as possible by making it as accessible as possible for people. So they dropped their price. And what was happening through that time was that because they dropped their price and they started to bundle these different movies together, it allowed their industry to innovate really fast. And so because those B movies were produced by smaller studios, they had different stars, what they started to experience over that time was that those smaller studios started to innovate a lot, and they started to discover stars that hadn't been seen before. And as a result of that, they really kick-started Hollywood to be in what they called their golden era for a long, long time. So this is the time that Fred Astaire comes out of Hollywood. We found these people who were such extraordinary talents because we could innovate. And that's what helps us flip from a short-term solution to a long-term fix, is we start to think about, what does this innovation allow me to do differently in the future? So I think about this from my perspective. You know, in lots of ways, I'm in an industry, I speak about work and I teach about leadership and strategy. And as a result, you know, my work over the next little while has looked drastically different. So what is my short-term solution? Well, in lots of ways, it's to become as valuable as possible during this time and to be as accessible as possible. A short-term solution, I mean, what's the long-term fix? Well, over time, what this will help me discover is how to teach in new ways and how to reach people in new ways. And as a result, end up in a spot where my work can thrive as a result of that. And so when you think about what that means in your life, what can you do right now that's a really short-term solution that allows you to think about, what am I good at and how can I apply that in the most accessible way possible right now? Is it volunteering? Is it helping somebody else? Is it getting involved in an industry that I've wanted to get involved in for a long time on a very fringe basis just because I've got some time to do it? And again, that's not going to solve my long-term problem with work, but what it's going to do is allow you to innovate and get moving so much faster than you would have before to eventually end up in a different spot. And so when we think about these situations that feel so unprecedented, perhaps they're not. Perhaps we've learned lessons in the past that really do help us think through what's the answer here. What that's going to allow you to do is jump from, this is causing me stress, to now I can develop a strategy. And when you're in that spot, all sorts of doors start to open. And I'm here to help walk you through those doors. Cheering you on, and all the best.